I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Coastfire, but it's something I've been doing some research on, and I wanted to make a video about it because I definitely think it's something that appeals to a lot of people, especially in this younger generation, right? So picture this, you're 28, you're 30, maybe you're 35 years old, and you've saved enough money that you don't need to invest another dollar for your retirement. From that point on, you can literally just coast. Your retirement is basically guaranteed, even if you only make enough to cover your bills today. And that's called Coastfire. It's not about quitting your job tomorrow, but it's about giving yourself freedom decades before traditional retirement ages. But how does Coastfire actually work, and how is it different from full fire? Also, what are the risks behind it? So let's go ahead and break it down. So what is Coastfire, right? How does this actually work? Well, Coastfire is part of the larger FIRE movement, which stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. But it's a lighter and more approachable, appealing version for people who maybe don't make as much money. And here's how it works. What you do is you basically save and invest aggressively early on in your life, right? Usually your 20s, your 30s, to basically you're going to hit a point where your investments have grown enough that even if you never contribute another penny to your investment accounts, compound growth alone will take you to your retirement goal by the time you're 59 and a half or 65. And at that point, all your job needs to do is cover your current lifestyle, your rent, your groceries, your travel, your utilities, while your investments are going to grow untouched in the background. And that's what's called coasting. No, so basically, you're not going to be sprinting to the finish line anymore. You're not going to be trying to, get an investment portfolio with $50 million and become rich overnight. You've basically already run far enough that momentum is going to carry you the rest of the way. Now, how does Coastfire really work? And this is where the cheat code comes from with Coastfire. Coastfire works because it's powered through compound interest. Now, if you're already invested, you should understand the concept of compound interest. But let's say you're new to investing, you don't understand it still. Basically, compounding, all that means is your investments are going to earn returns. And then those returns are going to earn their own returns, and so forth, and so forth, and so forth. And basically, you create this snowball effect. And the earlier you start, the bigger the snowball has the chance to get. So let's use an example here, right? Say you're 25 years old and you can invest $200,000. Now, I'm 25. I don't have anywhere near $200,000. But, for example's sake, I know there's 25-year-olds out there that probably can get their hands on $200,000 through aggressive savings or a high-paying job or side hustles, whatever it might be. At an average return of 7% a year, which in my opinion, 7% a year is pretty conservative. I feel like the market has been average, returning anywhere from like 10 to 12% these past couple of years. By the time you're 65 years old, that money would grow to over $3 million, even if you never invested another penny past the age of 25. Now, if you compare that to someone who waits until they're 40 years old to start investing, they would have to invest way more money up front per month to even get close to that $3 million number because they have missed out on 15 years of compounding. And that's why Coastfire is so appealing. Basically, your job is to front load your effort, front load your savings, your investing, to the point where you can literally stop saving for retirement at 30 or 35, but at the same time still retire a millionaire. So let's talk about the difference between Coastfire and full fire, just so it's crystal clear, because this was confusing me at first. Full fire, right? Full financial independence, retire early, basically means you have saved enough money to cover all of your living expenses for the rest of your life. So for example, let's say you want to spend $50,000 a year. You would need about $1.25 million invested, if we're going to base it off the 4% rule. And once you hit that 1.25 million, you never have to work again unless you want to, right? That is full freedom, but it usually requires extreme saving, very high incomes, and sacrificing a lot of your time and energy. Where on the other hand, you have Coastfire, and this is a lot more appealing, especially to younger generations, because now, the problem is it doesn't mean you can quit working yet, but it does mean that you've saved enough that your future, your retirement account is secured. So your retirement's basically guaranteed. All you have to do now is keep working to pay your current bills. So think of it like this. Full fire is like you crossing the finish line already, whereas Coastfire is like walking to the finish line but still knowing you're going to get there and finish strong. The biggest difference between the two is accessibility. Full fire might feel impossible to the average 25-year-old who's making $50,000 a year. But Coastfire is definitely an achievable goal. It's something that you can realistically hit in your late 20s or early 30s if you can make smart money moves at an early point in life. And this is why Coastfire is a game changer, right? Once you hit Coastfire, once you hit that Coastfire number, you don't have to max out retirement accounts anymore. So that pressure is completely gone. And I know that's a big pressure that's put on a lot of 20-year-olds is you want to start focusing on retirement. Also, you can switch to a lower paying or even less stressful job because once you hit your number, maybe you ditch that 9-to-5 corporate job, or maybe you ditch that really intense labor tasking job and you go to something like freelancing or a passion project or work on a side hustle, because all you need to do is just cover your day-to-day expenses. Also, you're going to have more flexibility with time, right? So if you want to take a mini vacation, go part-time, travel for a few months, well, you can, because you don't have to worry about falling behind on retirement since that's secured. And this is what makes Coastfire so attractive for millennials and Gen Z specifically. Because I feel like most of us nowadays, we're not chasing that $5 million, $10 million, $20 million portfolio by the age of 35. All we want are just options. We want to enjoy our life before we retire. And Coastfire gives you those options without requiring you to live on, top ramen and rice for decades at a time. Okay, so how can you actually find out your Coastfire number? Because everyone's Coastfire number is going to be different, right? You basically need to ask yourself this question, right? How much would I need invested today so that without adding anything else, no money at all, it naturally grows into what I'll need at retirement? So step one, you need to figure out your retirement goal, right? So, if you think about this, right? Let's say you want to live off $40,000 a year. Let's say you can live a modest life, drive a modest car, not splurge your money whenever the temptation comes, and you think you can live off $40,000 a year. Well, if you multiply 40,000 by 25, which is the 4% rule, you'll need about $1 million when you retire. So step two is to work backward. So if you're 25, you have 40 years until you're 65. You don't need the full $1 million right now. Because of compounding, you only need to reach about $200,000 invested now, assuming you're going to get anywhere from a 7 to 10% increase on an annual percentage scale. So if you're 30 with 35 years left, that number's probably going to go up because you've lost, some years of compound interest. So that number might be, closer to 250 or 300K. If you're 40, you're going to need even more money because once again, you've lost out on some of that compound runway. So your Coast number really depends on two things. It depends on your lifestyle, retirement target, right? What type of lifestyle are you trying to live when you retire? If you can live off $20,000 a year when you retire, you're going to kill it. You're going to be able to reach your Coastfire number really fast. Whereas if you need $1 million a year when you retire, well, at that point, it's going to be really hard to reach that Coastfire number. The next thing depends on how much time you have left before retirement. If you're 18 watching this video, man, you can reach Coastfire. If you make the right decisions now, you can reach Coastfire by the time you're 30. But if you're 35 watching this video, you might need to plan things differently, invest more, save more, be more aggressive. That way you could potentially reach that number at 50, which is still 10 to 15 years before, the typical person even retires. But the main point is the earlier you start, the smaller your Coastfire number has to be. Okay, so now we have our Coastfire number. How are we actually going to reach Coastfire? There's 5 steps to do this. The first step is to save aggressively early. Your first 5 to 10 working years are going to matter the most. Your 20s, every $1 invested in your 20s could be worth $5 to $10 in the next 20 to 30 years. Number 2 is you really want to max out your tax advantage accounts. So your Roth IRAs, your 401ks, your health savings account, because you don't want to leave, free tax advantages on the table. Number 3 is you want to stick to index funds. You don't need to gamble on hype stocks for this. You want low-cost funds like VOO or VTI that protect your money and historically return 8 to 10% annually. Number 4 is you want to avoid lifestyle creep. Raises don't need to equal new expenses, so you want to invest the difference. And number 5 is staying on course. Stick to your plan. The market's probably going to crash at some point. Don't panic sell because compounding only works is if you give it time. Now, obviously, like everything else, there's some downsides when it comes to Coastfire because if it was perfect, everyone would do it. The first con to Coastfire is it only secures your retirement future. You still have to work today to pay for rent, food, and things that life throws at you. You can't just completely retire. Second, like I said, the market doesn't go in a straight line. Recessions are going to happen, and if returns are lower than expected, well, you might need to adjust some numbers. Third, life changes. Maybe you're going to want to retire earlier. Maybe your lifestyle is going to creep up. That means you'll need bigger Coast numbers than you first thought. So be able to, work with the times and be fluid. And lastly, Coastfire only works if you don't touch your invested money. Once you dip into your investments for a house or a car or other big expenses, you're resetting that Coastfire clock. So there is some risks, but compared to the average person who never saves and spends all their money, Coastfire at least gives you peace of mind and flexibility way earlier. So if you ask me, if you're at this point in the video and you're thinking, is Coastfire worth it? I personally think Coastfire is worth it because it gets rid, in my opinion, of the biggest anxiety and stress driver when it comes to your finances. Once you've hit your Coast number, you know that your future is secured. And there's nothing that would make me sleep better at night knowing that my retirement is already secured today, right? Any money I save after that, that's just going to be extra padding, And like I told you guys, I don't think our generation really wants to be ultra millionaires and rich. I mean, I could be wrong, but I think the real power for us and the real financial freedom for us is having options, having flexibility, and just peace of mind when it comes to our finances. I feel like that's more of a flex than having 20 cars. I would rather have peace of mind and options, right? So here's going to be your choice, right? You can grind for the next 40 years and hope you're okay at 65. Don't save, don't invest, let lifestyle creep take over your life. Or you can lock in, you can push hard early, save, invest, be aggressive with your finances, stick to a plan, and Coastfire. And you're going to enjoy decades of financial peace and just live a less stressful life. So which one sounds better to you? Drop a comment if you're aiming for full fire, if you're aiming for Coastfire, or somewhere in between. And don't forget to subscribe and like so we can keep stacking smarter together. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good day.